Great. Love it. We'll find out.
Okay.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Dare to Differentiate podcast. I'm Khani, your host. Special, beautiful guest today, which we're very excited about. Ruthy Procaccia, illustrator.
Yes.
Palette person, queen.
The official title. Oh,
Official
queen!
title.
I love that. I was thinking when I first started my palette page, I called it the palette person, and
I
was
remember
so
that.
thrilled. I was thrilled about the alliteration. I was like, "Wow, this is so cute." But then I changed it to my name. The reason why I changed it to my name is because I felt like palette didn't fully encapsulate everything that I was doing.
Right.
Like palette implies just the colors, and there was so much more. So then I changed it to my name because I felt like what would encapsulate everything that I do more than my name. But then later I was like, if I were doing this again, I think I would put the color queen.
You still
more than
can.
the palette person.
No,
now I'm going
color
to keep
queen.
my name.
The color queen, because I feel like you also do. I mean, I originally found you. I mean, I think we might have been in high school together.
I'm not sure we were.
I don't remember how I knew who you were, but somehow I found your page on Instagram. And you were posting these like crazy illustrations, which were so gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I was just like blown away by like and you were, I don't know, there was like all this art stuff you were sharing like back in the day. Probably
Yeah.
like 5-6 years ago, I feel like.
Yeah. I definitely used to share a lot more of my art than I do now. Really just because I have less time for that. I still do it, but in a slightly less, like in a smaller capacity.
Yeah.
I was
Cool.
actually just recounting the story of how I, like now I have like a website, you can see all my art, I do custom work, I have prints that you can buy. But the thing that started that, I had started posting my illustrations on Instagram, and someone messaged me. I think it was like someone's graduation, and she wanted to buy them a gift.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, "Oh, how much do you charge?" Or like, do you do custom? And I was just like, yes. And I made up a number that was obviously way too low. And that was it. I just like pretended as if like, yeah, no, this is something that I do.
These are my rates.
And that was
Here we are.
it. And it spiraled, you know?
How many years ago was that?
2024 now. 5 or 6, something like that.
Wow. And how long I feel like you were sharing for a while before that.
That was in June. I think I started posting stuff January or December, because that was when I had gotten an iPad. The iPad was revolutionary for me because it like I was able to do so much more because I was no longer constricted by like time or like the physical. I had painted before then, but with paint, once you make your color, you mix your color, you finish it up, you can probably never recreate the exact same. And also I didn't have the physical space to really get into that. So with the iPad, it's like I can start and stop at will. I don't need any space for it.
You can bring that
Color
little
pick.
color pick.
Yeah.
Special handy dandy little trick.
Procreate has the thing in it. So yeah, that was the point where I started like heavily creating and sharing.
I was speaking to another artist also, and Anita Sobel. For anyone who knows her, she's really interesting and brilliantly talented. And she was telling me also that she was doing illustrations because she just did it on her iPad or however I don't know how she did it, but that was like her form where she was able her kids with the mess and like the space.
Yeah. It's very helpful. You can like it opens up other sorts of doors. There's a learning curve, by the way. To be
I feel
clear,
like we need to talk about
with
that.
digital art. Oh my goodness. I feel like relatively I actually picked it up like fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But no, it was like, wow, this is an entirely new medium. Like, how do I use this? How do I interact with it? So it was a little challenging. Should I be looking at the camera?
No,
as well?
you can just look at me. It's really fascinating, this whole digital creation space. I feel like it's just so telling of like the world that we're in. And I was thinking like I'm sure you have so much insight to like the digital universe through your creating art, like you were mentioning your digital art versus like your physical art. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know how much insight I have, but what's actually interesting is that I had mentioned this to you the other day, right? I've actually recently been wanting to get back into physical because there's something about the tactile, like it's a different experience. It's basically what I've been doing as of late. I've been doing this more like freestyle art. Because if you look at my illustrations, they're very like specific with like a very clean outline and very like perfect lines. But I've recently been doing something like just purely expression, where I just like pick whatever colors and use whatever brushes and Procreate that I feel in the moment. The cool part is that when you go into it after you analyze, it's like, oh, like I put this here, that's interesting, like I use these colors, fascinating. But in the moment I'm just going with it. And I was like, well, it would be very cool to do this not in a digital capacity. Like I want to just go to Michael's or Blick's or whichever store it is and just like walk down the aisles and just pull the things that are calling me. As a kid when I used to paint, I felt like I needed, like if I was like, you know, getting this like acrylic paint, so like I need all the colors in this, but I want to just go take like 3 colors of acrylic paint, take a few colors of pastels, take like 1 can of spray paint, like just whatever I feel like pulled to, and then just create with that. So I don't know when I'll get on that.
That's really exciting. I remember when you told me about it, I was so excited. I was like, that is so fun.
It's going to be cool. I'll show you what I do.
I know you will. Remember those like suitcases with like all the pastels, all the crayons, all the markers. I'm going to get myself a little every single like, but you said you don't want that anymore.
No, I'm going to put it all in a
suitcase. Little wheelie.
Oh.
Rollerboard.
That'd be cool.
And you could paint the actual like suitcase.
Oh,
you can like create art with that.
I could do that.
And it could be like a multi, what's the word? Mixed media?
Mixed media. Yeah, this is the word. Mixed media.
Mixed media.
This is what I want to get into. You don't have really mixed media with digital. Like you can make something look mixed media, but it's not really mixed media.
Mixed media I've seen. I mean, this is kind of mixed media.
Yes.
Like
a touch.
With that little touch of
texture.
Super fun.
The little hints of metallic.
Yeah. I remember seeing someone do, it was basically like a print with watercolor and then some acrylic like in it. And I was like, that's so brilliant. So like dynamic.
There's a dimension there also.
Yeah.
Because like some of it stays in the background and some of it comes forward, especially if you're using something acrylic usually has like a bit of a texture to it.
Yeah.
So like there's, again, with the tactile, it's like you could feel it, you know?
How did that, your illustrations lead you to becoming the palette queen, color queen, the queen of colors?
Apparently there are a lot of...
I feel like we never spoke about this.
I don't think we did. Apparently, by the way, there are a lot of handles on Instagram with like the color queen, like all the different variations, like underscore, period, whatever. So yeah, like the palette person was genuinely unique.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I would. But how did I go from art to image consulting? It actually was not really related to that.
Right.
I have been super into art from a very young age. And I was also separately fascinated by color from a very young age. I think I was in... like 3rd grade. Remember the GCM had these? Oh, you didn't grow up here.
I've been to the GCM.
GCM had these classes like the first couple of years that they opened up, like after school classes. There was like a cooking and a this and a that and string art, and there was a painting class there also. And that was my first experience with first encounter with paint. And I remember the art teacher, the woman who was teaching the class. I actually ended up teaching her daughter years later, which was just
cute.
like a very like full circle moment. I was like, oh, that's very sweet. Like, I remember your mom. She was like my first introduction to art.
You're a JCM success story.
Yeah. Boom. Into art now. But I remember her
Wait till I
explaining,
start
like,
fundraising from you.
I remember her explaining, like, you know, the different colors and how to mix it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, like, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it really like, was like, wow, like this is a cool world over here.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like it kind of continues from there. I started like reading books on color. I remember I got that little like color wheel that you can get at Michael's that I actually use in color sessions today to like show people how it works. And then reading books on color and color theory.
Can you describe that wheel?
It has like, you know, you'd make like little paper clip or like a clock or something. You'd put a paper clip in so you could rotate the different stuff. So it's kind of like that, where you have, I think it's 3 layers that you rotate, and it shows you color theory. So it'll show you all the different color schemes. So you have complementary, analogous, monochromatic, all of those, triadic, split complementary. So you can rotate it to like see all of the different combinations with all the different colors. It also shows you the tint, the shade, the tone. And it's just a very handy tool for someone who's just learning. It's like $5 or something, like small, compact, easy. So that was kind of my big introduction to color theory and the color wheel. So like as I got older, I started reading other books. I'll tell you when I discovered color analysis. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was in teen camp, Camp Amuna. And there was a girl, I still remember exactly who it is. I doubt she has any, like if I were to tell her this, she'd be like, huh? But she was wearing this blue shirt that precisely matched her eyes. And everyone was giving her so many compliments, like, wow, that color looks so good in you, blah, blah, blah. And every time someone would compliment her, she'd be like, yeah, I got my palette done. She's like, 14? I don't even know. But I remember, like, I immediately understood that.
You're like, oh, that
right
makes
away.
sense.
Yeah, I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's a really cool thing. I want to get my palette done. I would actually love to do palettes one day.
Just got chills. Like you got it. Like you didn't need anyone to explain it to you.
It was like very intuitive, like that. Like, because I knew the concept of a palette, and like right away, I was like, in my head, like it went very quickly, like, oh, that must mean like having a palette that's like for you. Like that's a really cool concept.
You're like, I'm sold.
Yeah. No, like that was it. I was like, that's a really cool thing. And then, you know, heard more about it. And what's actually interesting is that oh, I want to do this when I get older, actually kind of disappeared. I was like, nah, that's not practical. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that. And like there were like different rationalizations for it. Like I wouldn't be able to do that. And then I got older, read more, researched, blah, blah, blah. Started following people on Instagram a few years ago, including Olga. You know who she is? I feel like I don't have to say the last name. Like Olga. Everyone knows who Olga is.
I mean, the ones who know.
The ones who know. So I had followed her also. And then she was posting that she was doing a course. And then something shifted in my brain. I was like, I could do this. Like, I've been following so many other color analysts. And like, wait, I could do that. I could be that person. Call back to what you were saying earlier, right? Like, oh, I am that person.
Yeah.
And then I, you know, checked in like on the practical side, like, can I do this? Yes, I can. And flew to Cupertino and learned the stuff.
Wow. I'll tell you what moved me the most about this whole thing that you just shared was when you were so young, like you had such a clear like path of like, no, this is what I want. And then different things came in that way, but somehow you like came back to it. You came back home to it at also a very relatively young age.
Yeah.
You know, like all things considered, like pretty young.
True.
Which is magnificent. But I think it's also for me to hear that when you said, oh, I forgot that I had this dream, and there's so many of those. This past summer, I had an experience also where like I forgot that I loved photography. I forgot. Like I forgot how many blogs I read. I forgot how I knew, like I read back Tumblr like blog days, like I knew every single firm photographer and I followed every single one of their blogs. Like before Instagram, before, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with that, but it was just like I forgot.
Sometimes we forget.
Yeah. And there's, like you said, like it's not practical, it's not whatever.
And then it kind of just fades.
Yeah. You get busy, you get like distracted. But I just love that you came back so soon.
It was very soon. Come to think of it, you're right. It was like, it was a quick.
Yeah.
It was a quick one. So what's interesting about this, I wrote a newsletter about this a few weeks ago. I started writing a newsletter. Sign up everyone. So basically,
I'll have the link in bio for everyone to sign up.
So basically the reasoning behind that, I write a lot of content on my Instagram. Like my posts are usually like, it's not like a picture of a palette and like, oh, this person is a spring. It's usually like there's a lot of stuff there. So the newsletter is really just a way to kind of like, it's a more long form because Instagram caption is a little short. So that's what the newsletter is for. But I wrote about this. The title was Coming Back to Ourselves. And I wrote about this idea that that as kids, we actually tend to be really in tune. And this, I'm talking about just like practical aesthetic stuff, not even like dreams or even personality, just like from the aesthetic side, we tend to be very in tune. The example in there that I gave was of my niece. They live in Florida. My niece she's 5, I think. Did she just turn 6? I don't remember. I'm so sorry. No, I think her birthday's coming up. I think her birthday's coming up because I know it's after my nephew. I believe it's in Adar.
So then she's still 5.
Hi, Adar. So she's still 5? I guess she's still 5. Sorry, Abby. I love you. I just don't remember. I'm sorry. But she's an autumn. A very creative style. And like, you see that from such a young age, like the outfits that she'll put together. Also, she's always like wearing stuff, like she'll do like pants under a skirt and like with boots, and like she's in Florida, it's hot. And that's fine. She's not trying to dress for the weather. She's trying to dress the way she feels. And like, you can see that this is like, it's so clearly visible from such a young age. Like this is her personal aesthetic. And that's how it tends to be. We know when we're very small, we're just like naturally drawn to these things and it works and that's it. But then over time, we kind of lose that. Yeah. What happens very often with the palette is that you kind of rediscover. For a lot of people, it's this feeling of coming home to yourself, where it's like, oh, like I remember this. I had an experience with a client that like, there's one particular experience that really stands out where all the things that I was like, oh, like this looks good on you, like wear this. She was like, look at these pictures of me when I was young. Like those are exactly the things that I used to love to wear. And like, that tells us something, right? That's what it is. You're coming home.
That's so beautiful.
It's a satisfying moment.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
And you get to like witness people in that, like all the time.
All the time. This is beautiful.
What has like most surprised you? Witnessing people like rediscovering themselves through getting their palette done.
Unfortunately, none of it surprises me.
None of it surprises you?
None of it surprises me. No, I'm like, no, this is exactly what it is.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying the reaction more.
So, no, it's never like a surprise to me, but there are moments that are extraordinarily beautiful. Yeah. Extraordinarily beautiful. And the thing, I've said this, I think, a bunch of times, and it's a thing that I always come back to because it's so like strong in my mind. Wow, the way I lost my train of thought by the end of that sentence.
Something that's really beautiful when you share people their palettes.
When I finish the palette.
Yes.
And then one of two things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Either they're looking at the palette, and I've seen like both of these. They look at the palette and they're like, wow, that's so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, this over here, this is your face. For us to say the palette is so pretty is to say you're so pretty, because this is you. This is like, you know, pixelization and little pieces of fabric, but this is you.
Yeah.
I remember when I did my mother's palette, I had a moment where I saw her differently. Like, I looked at the palette and I was like, wow, this is stunning. And then I looked at my mother and I was like, this is a really beautiful woman. Wow. And it like watching other people, like, it's also like really impactful.
So moving.
It was quite a moment. Like, that stands out in my mind.
Wow.
And then the other thing is where people are used to seeing themselves wearing certain colors, mm-hmm. metaphorically, in one specific way.
Right. For example?
I'll give you an example. No, I have an example. And then you put the colors that are actually like harmonious with their mm-hmm. faces, and it's like they see themselves in a new light. Yeah. There was one palette that I was doing for a male client. You know who you are.
You know who you are.
You know who you are.
You get a little shout out.
You get a little shout out. He's a Sandy Spring, and he loves blue and gray. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't look great. He knows, though. He knows it's not a good look. And he's a Sandy Spring. So it's like the springy colors, but like on the warm side, a hint of a little bit toasted. So there, you know, there's like a turquoise in there. There's like lots of greens and browns, peachy colors, very different from blue and gray. Blue and gray are predominantly like the predominant difference, cool versus warm, but then also his colors are very bright. And like to put his fan in front of him, and it's like, oh, I'm trying to remember. I think he was like, wow, I look so handsome, like something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it's like look, like see yourself differently. Mm-hmm. See yourself as you are.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times I see this, I witness it, I like using the word witness to describe this, every time again it's like, wow. Like to get to watch another person like really see themselves in a new way. So beautiful.
There's a few times as you were talking that I wanted to stop you to like explain what all the things you were talking about. You were talking about warm and cool and this and that. And I kind of like take it for granted that like I understand what you're saying, but I feel like I need to ask you to explain a little bit of like some of the theories you just mentioned.
What should I explain? Should we talk about warm versus cool?
No. You can Google that.
Google it, everyone. I actually have a great post about this on my page. Go look at it.
Okay. No, I feel like it's more about more like what sets you apart, what you bring to the table in this whole conversation of people wearing their colors that look good on them, A, and B, I know there's like a whole other like aspect that you're like super into, the archetypes. So I'd love for you to like, I'd love to invite you. You're like so excited about this, as am I.
There's so much
like,
to say.
To how you bring that into the whole color theory situation, because what's really important is, number one, getting your color palette done, which means basically getting somebody to analyze and let you know like what colors make you look best, what are your colors, like you said, like what colors represent your face. And everyone kind of does it with their own flavor.
Yeah.
And so you have a very unique, special like spice to it. So let's get into it.
First, I really do take it for granted that like people know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And I forget that people don't. Like I really forget that people don't, because like I'm so involved in it, and typically the people that I'm talking to about this, they're already familiar with the ideas. And
probably a lot of your clients have been thinking about it for years.
Yeah.
And like
they're following me for a while.
Yeah.
So it's not so new to them. So I do very much take it for granted, and I forget that I have to, like, not everyone knows everything that I'm talking about. But the first thing that I want to say is that there are a lot of different image consultants, and I've said this before, and I think that it's a very important important to consider who you want to go to.
Yes.
So this is both a science and an art.
Yes.
So because there's an artistic component, you want to consider who's going to be doing your palette, because whoever it is will be putting some of themselves into it, and everyone has their own aesthetic viewpoint. This is the term for how we, Suzanne Cagle in her book, what's the name of her book? It just escaped me. She's the one who came up with all this stuff. So she talks about this in the beginning of her book. She has 4 different artists. She shows you 4 different artists from each from a different season, painted the same, I think it's a bouquet. Is it a bouquet of flowers? I think so. For a second I was like, is it fruit? I think it was a bouquet of flowers. So 4 different people each used the same reference. So they're all painting the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all look so different because everyone has their own aesthetic viewpoint. So you're seeing something, you and I will look at the same thing and we'll see it differently. Yeah. This is also, by the way, when a client comes, I ask clients to bring me a lot of pictures of very specific things so that I can start to understand their own, like, what their personal preference is. And then the first, like, half hour to 40 minutes of the session is just them explaining to me what they liked about each picture, because we can look at the same picture and I'm noticing certain things, but they chose it for something totally different. So everyone has their own, like, you're viewing the world through your own lens. So you're going to want to choose a consultant that you feel like you connect with them, mm-hmm. because there's going to be a little bit of them in your palette.
Yeah.
I don't remember why I started saying that.
Well, I was asking you what sets you apart? What's your
right.
secret sauce?
Okay. So first, just like that everyone should be know, K-N-O-W, not N-O. Everyone should know. That's something that you'll want to consider.
Yeah.
Look at the people. And you're not making this decision based on price. Look at the people, because this is a lifelong thing. You don't want to miss out on something because you wanted to spend a little less. But consider, who's the person who's making it? Mm-hmm. Which artist are you choosing? And we know this in terms of something like wall art, there are different artists whose art you appreciate. So when it comes to image consulting also, so regardless of what my secret sauce is, consider who you want to make your palette. I'm not for everyone. Yeah. So find the person who speaks to you. So my philosophies have kind of evolved since I started this, which has been a fascinating thing for me to experience. And I did not imagine that would happen. Mm-hmm. I was just this is a thing. This is how it works. And lo and behold, it has continuously evolved. So there are 2 things. First, I started working with the kind of perspective of Carl Jung's 12 archetypes. I was introduced to this concept of using that in image consulting by Olga at the conference for image consultants last March or April. I don't remember exactly when it was. But she introduced me to this idea. It was a 2-day event. So there were a couple of, what was the word I used before? I didn't say lecture.
Workshop?
Presentation,
let's say.
So there were a couple of presentations, and I found the concept to be absolutely fascinating. It's
can you just explain the concept that you're fascinated by?
So Carl Jung came up with these 12 archetypes. I have yet to figure out one neat sentence to kind of describe it. the way I have it in my brain, there are like different ways of being. So to give an example, there is, let's say, caregiver. That's one role. There is ruler. That's a different role. So they're kind of roles that people can take, and they exist like across culture, across like time period, from country to country. Like they're kind of universal. That's the word. They're universal.
There you have your neat sentence. Universal.
Yeah. Look, there we go. There are different visuals that will represent these different roles.
Okay.
So like the look of caregiver is going to be, and this is used in branding, by the way. Like if you look it up, like there's so much great content about this, and specifically for branding. So like in terms of a branding perspective, it's like hands, helping, kind of like uniform look also. And then in style, romantic style clothing and traditional style clothing convey that feel of caregiver. Here is someone taking care of you. So there are 12 of them, and when you understand the different archetypes and you understand the visual components that express the different kind of energy or vibe of each one, you can incorporate that into the style input that you're giving someone. So then instead of it just being, oh, you're spring, wear this, it became, let's get to know you a little bit better on a more individual level. And then it's like, oh, lover, everyman, caregiver. So like we're looking at it from that lens, and it's also much more individualized because there are 4 seasons, and like, yeah, there are subtypes, but how many subtypes are there? And then when you come to archetypes, there are 12 of them, and each person will have like 2 or 3 dominant. We have a little bit of each one in us, which is also very interesting, because take something like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs. They're your one type, your one thing. With the palette also, your one thing. But with the archetypes, everyone has a little bit of each. And also, if you think about it, you move through your life, you move through different roles. There are some moments in life that call for ruler energy. There are some moments in life that call for caregiver energy. Those seem to be the 2 at the forefront of my mind right now because I keep bringing them up. Warrior. There are some moments that call for warrior. There are some moments that call for rebel, otherwise known as outlaw. So like we'll move through all of them. And also think about life cycle. Some of these are life cycle things. So we have a little bit of each one in us. And then we're looking at the ones that are dominant within you, and those will inform your style. So I feel like I a little bit lost where I was going with it.
You were just connecting the archetypes to like identifying people.
So I'll give you palette. Yeah. So I want to give you an example of what that looks like. And there are 2 examples that come to mind with why it would be so useful to consider this when you're giving someone color and style advice. I'll get into why the color in a minute. But take, for example, there was this spring palette that I made. Spring is typically very casual, very like fun, jeans and t-shirt, kind of girl next door vibe. And this woman, she's a vital spring, as it were. So like already a little bit of a different vibe. But she, like those classic spring styles really did not work for her. And then when you look at it from an archetype lens, it's like, oh, she's like very strong ruler. So then it's like, oh, let's look at what a ruler would wear. And then like it's more black, like more like structure.
Like dual tones or like metals? Is that ruler?
I'm trying to remember the like specifics. I don't have like the list in the front of my mind right now. I have like in my notes. But definitely the black.
The black?
Lots of black.
Some people would be so happy to hear that. That's like, I think, feel like the biggest disappointment for people when they get their palette done. They can't wear black.
I don't get that. Like, why is it so disappointing to like what do you need in black?
I don't get it either. It makes no sense to me. Because, I mean, I don't really wear black at all, and I haven't for years. But it's just like this thing that people like, it's like a fear.
So I do find it interesting.
I have theories.
Like,
I'm curious what your theories are. Like,
exactly
what is
what's
that?
beneath that? Well, there could be multiple different reasons that someone would choose to wear black. Like, I've noticed points in my life where I wore more black versus less black. I can do black.
Black is on our palette. Don't
black
worry.
is on my palette.
All the palette police out there.
But yeah, I think that someone who does not have black, and everyone has their black, but someone who doesn't have actual black and that feels like a crushing blow, that's worth examining. Like, did we mistype this person? Are they hiding behind something? Is there a reason that black feels comfortable and safe? And sometimes it's that. Sometimes they're hiding behind it because when you wear the colors that work best for you, you can't hide. You're front and center. You will be noticed. People will recognize, like, oh, this is someone for us to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't feel safe to exist in your fullest expression. But definitely someone who should not technically be wearing black and really wants to be wearing black, like, there are questions to ask. Like, let's dig into that. Like, what's behind that?
Yeah. It's interesting. The first thing you said is, like, did we make a mistake as color analysts? That was, like, the first thing. You're like, let me take some responsibility here. Yeah, then number two, are you hiding behind something? And I also love what you said about, like, the fear of safety, because I actually would like to, like, explore that a little bit, because safety is such an important, like, center feeling to have, just to, like, exist.
Yeah.
Like, to exist as yourself. Building that, and I think for a lot of people that's like the biggest challenge, to create that safety, to find that safety, to feel like they can exist in a universe. I'm wondering if, based on your experience, like, what you can share about that.
So
that could be, like, really helpful.
This is something important.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes the work is not, like, at that point it's not about the palette anymore.
Of course not.
Right. So then it's a matter of, like, okay, so what can we do to restore a sense of safety, and it's no longer connected to the palette. But here's the interesting part. Sometimes when you kind of get back into yourself, especially we talked about that, like, feeling of coming home, sometimes that in itself could be very transformational.
For sure.
And, like, it's an uncomfortable sort of transition moment where you're, like, doing something that you've forgotten about. You haven't done it in so long. But sometimes just stepping back into that alone can shift your feeling of safety. Maybe
the unsafety is not being connected to, like,
sometimes it's that,
who you are, and, like, just wearing black because it maybe black.
That's so sad to me.
No, but I'm saying, like, maybe it's not for certain people. Maybe that's not safe, but, like, they think that, like, that's gonna. But it's also interesting because sometimes depends on how you're feeling. Kind of have to check your pulse before you get dressed in the morning to be like, what am I feeling? What am I wearing today? Sometimes you have to change midday.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be like, you have this perfect outfit planned, and then, like, you just can't wear it.
Yeah.
Because there's, like, an energy there that is not going to work. And, like, can we lean into that more?
Yeah.
Can we, like, show up for ourselves, create that safety of, like, oh, I don't want to wear that. Okay. I'll find something else to wear. Yeah. But, like, the bed's going to be a mess, and, like, everything's going to be all over.
So you'll clean it up.
But, like, at least you'll feel better.
Yeah.
You know? I feel like there's also, like, so much shame in that. Like, it takes so long to get ready.
No.
As a child.
No. Like, take however much time you need. No, because...
Can you say that again?
Take however much time you need to get ready. This is not a question. You need to get ready. Take your time. And why am I saying this specifically? The way we feel can impact the clothes that we choose to put on. And the clothes that we choose to put on can impact the way we feel. So take your time to get ready. Getting dressed is sort of it's an expression of us from the one angle, right? It's kind of an inward, outward thing, and then it's also the inverse where it could impact you from the exterior. So no, it's definitely something to think about and to evaluate. But I specifically want to speak to the piece where you're choosing what you feel in the moment, and this also ties back to the archetypes. There's also something else that occurred to me that I wanted to say that escaped me. So we'll see if it comes back.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I love that. But with the archetypes, you have a little bit of each one inside of you.
Yeah.
And this correlates very beautifully with the concept of the palette. Every single person, every single palette will have a range of colors. So you have your neutrals. So sometimes that will be black. It could be brown, navy, dark green, sort of plum. So you have those colors. And every category will have a psychological impact. So we know that there's a difference between wearing black and wearing red and wearing blue. So when you wear your version of black, it's this more elegant, formal, or bold. So your black is more elegant or formal. And this, again, your version of black. So whether it's black or whether it's blue,
like a deep brown,
whatever it is.
like
yeah. Sometimes it's like a dark wine. Sometimes it's a forest green. So whatever your version of black is, it's going to make you look more formal. Your reds will look more powerful and persuasive and kind of sexy. And that's, again, your red. So for some people, for, your classic winters, that's a very strong, very red. For your rose tone summer, it's this soft, dusty rose. For springs, it's coral. So everyone has their own version. And when you wear your red, it's going to have one effect. You have your dramatic colors. When you wear the colors that are dramatic for you, it's going to look very bright and eye-catching. You'll have a casual neutral, which is your version of like gray or camel or taupe. You'll have a subdued category, which is a more low-key sort of color. Your personal neutral, which is your eye color, is also going to have an effect. So what happens is, so everyone gets a complete fan. But some people won't necessarily make use of the entire thing. Summers often will appreciate living in their skin tones and pinks. Lots of winters tend to wear a lot of black or their like dark neutral colors. Springs actually tend to wear all of it. And this is, by the way, part of what I do. It's like, okay, so this is everything that's available to you, and then here's where you're likely going to spend the majority of your time, because your look, so for summer, your look is romantic, so the colors are soft and gentle, so like your skin tones and your pinks. All of this is to say that the whole thing is available to you. So for moments that you want to be formal or supremely elegant, then you reach for those categories. For moments that you want to feel, if you want all eyes on you, you'll wear your dramatic colors. For moments that you want to feel soft and gentle, you have your skin tones, you have your pinks. For moments that you want to feel particularly impactful and persuasive, or you want to feel very romantic, or, well, sexy and romantic are not quite the same. But for those moments, you have your red.
Both are, yeah.
So it's all available to you, and you can shift through it moment to moment. So when you're getting dressed, this is something to consider. And it's also worth considering, well, what am I doing with my day right now? How do I want to be perceived? Am I in a moment where I need all eyes on me? Am I in a moment where I am taking a backseat?
Am I feeling like really vulnerable and need like extra?
Also that.
Like if I'm feeling like I need to be, like if I'm feeling more, I noticed that the past couple weeks with the winter, if I'm feeling like vulnerable, I'll just wear my like long puffer just to feel like more cozy and like
protected.
Protected. Otherwise, like I can wear a jacket, and my jacket's really warm, but it's just like a different, depends what I'm feeling.
I feel like sometimes people think it's shallow.
It's
like,
really
what are you
not.
Dedicating so much time to what you look like, and like, no.
Can you please talk about that? Important. Why isn't it shallow?
Your outside is representative of the inside. I like to say this specifically about the face, and like this is why it's so important to dress in a way that is harmonious with your face. Your face is the literal physical embodiment of your soul. It is literally the physical body that your soul is in. So we understand this. The physical is a representation of the non-physical. So the clothes are a tool for expression, for taking what's inside of you and putting it out there. So it's important to consider. And there's two sides to this. There's how do I feel inside of me? And there's also sometimes it could be practical where you're like, okay, like today's a day I need to command attention because I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing, you know? So yeah, it's really an expression of what's going on inside of you. And like what's inside of you is valid and important. I feel like I need to say that again because you're going to have to edit that. What's inside of you is valid to like, why would it be shallow to be expressing that? Like, no, this is who you are. This is what's inside of you.
How can it be shallow? Not even one. Like, are you kidding me?
How can it be shallow? How can we put that word in a conversation where it's about taking what's inside of you and making it visible? Because, you know, we live in a three-dimensional world. Yeah. We live in a three-dimensional world. We don't exist as spiritual beings. We're souls in physical bodies. Yeah. So, you know, it seems obvious that the physical would be important.
Why is it not obvious, though? I'm curious, like, because you said it seems obvious.
I think people don't know.
They don't know.
I think people don't know.
So what would you tell people to like kind of shift them into like a different way of
saying I think that people separate. This is interesting coming from, you know, a Beisrivka background and Hasidus, because we learned that the whole purpose of the world is to engage the physical. We're trying to merge the two. And I think sometimes people miss that. Yeah. And like, no, the goal is to integrate the two. It is why we're here. That is literally why we're here. To have the physical experience. I think sometimes people miss that or are not fully aware of it. And then that's where that becomes a conversation where it's like, oh, like, why are you engaged with this stuff? Like, this is shallow or vain or meaningless. And like, no, it's a representation of the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, two things. First of all, it's that like because it's so powerful, I think this is like such an important like thing to center because it's so powerful and it is exactly what we need to be doing. I think because of that, it's very threatening to people. And they're just like, like this is where it stops.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valid point.
It's for some people. I think for some, it can be very threatening. Just like, oh my gosh, no, I can't wear black. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's what I wear. Especially, like, people who are, like, blonde or whatever, like, Summers or... but I also feel like examining that, like, pushback is so important because it also gives us insight to how to not combat it, how to engage with it, how to soften it, how to lovingly, compassionately see the opposition to it and be like, sweetheart, like, how can we help you see it differently?
I hear opposition.
Yeah.
And I immediately think Alta Rebbe. Beisrivka, everyone.
Literally. No, as in, like, you know what I mean? Like, this, people have just, like, all these questions and also, like, the judgment. Like, the judgment.
Damasha Toshev.
No, but...
when you understand when you can, like, pay attention to the...
No, but I feel like there's like, an emotional, like, reaction.
Yeah, there tends to be.
What is it?
I honestly think some of it could be upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Where people are kind of educated to believe, like they're taught certain things and they haven't questioned it. So sometimes there's some of that. It's like, oh, but like this is the way I view the world, you know? Yeah. And then to some degree, if you're questioning or threatening their worldview, it's like... that's when people get angry.
Yeah.
That's when people get angry.
Anger.
Anger's often a cover.
Yeah.
It's often a cover.
But anger the thing that covers anger, there's like a bunch of things that can cover anger, but what if we can like express that, find a way to like healthily express that anger? Like get it out of the system, let it run. Kind of lost me there. You mean?
No, so sometimes the anger is a cover for something else.
For sure.
Right. Not always. Anger also lets us know that our boundaries have been violated. But sometimes it's that. See, here's the thing. To me, it's a bit of a theoretical conversation because I'm not usually
engaged.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Just because, like, when people are in my sphere and we're talking about this, they're usually they already have the other perspective.
Yeah.
Where, like, they find it fascinating and they find it beautiful.
And they're coming. That's actually such a good point, and I love that you said that, because I think it also kind of goes back to like why it's hard to explain certain things because you're so in that world, and it's like the people who you engage with like don't have an issue with it, and if they do, like you don't engage with them.
Well, it's not so much that I'm choosing to consciously not engage with them,
No,
right?
not
it's just
at all.
like it doesn't come up. Like, when are we interacting?
100%,
you know?
which I think is also such a brilliant like thing to like understand, that when you have the people around you that get certain things that you don't have to explain, like it's just so it's nice, it's beautiful. I'm really so happy for you.
It's really nice.
It's like it's such a beautiful thing to be able to create and also be able to build something through it and connect with people. It's actually a beautiful insight because you're like, I don't have to explain this to anyone. Like, no one has any questions. They're all like in. Those are my people. Much. I love that.
Pretty much.
Like, people who are like judging palettes, like, do I have a second to engage with this? I don't.
Oh.
Not like in a like a like better than anyone type of way. It's just like it doesn't even come up.
It's not really a conversation that we're having. Occasionally people fight me in the DMs.
Right. But that's a different story.
Sometimes.
But that's different.
Yeah.
Or is it?
No, I think it's a little different. Because, like, you know, they're here and they're here.
Yeah. But what are the conversations that you do end up having that are like super meaningful in this space?
So usually that ends up being in the context of either I'm like sharing the wisdom with someone. Mm-hmm. The wisdom. And then there are also a lot of moments in sessions where I'm sharing something and it's like really impactful to the client. It's interesting, actually. I was thinking about this the other day. Again, I take a lot of this for granted, right? Because like I'm out here saying the same thing over and over and over again. So like to me, it's a given. So sometimes I'm like, I'm a little surprised with how people are like so impacted.
Right.
Like sometimes I forget, like this is new information to some people.
Yeah. To most people in this world, it's new information.
But see, I don't even know that.
You don't even realize.
I don't even realize.
I feel like this is this thing right here about it's not an echo chamber, but it's being in a place where the people around you get you.
Also that, like, think about a teacher
mm-hmm.
who's teaching whatever subject in whatever school or university. They're engaged with the same thing over and over and over again. So it's not an echo chamber. I don't know what the word is, but there is an element of like you're in it all the time.
Yeah.
So like you're not necessarily having so much dialogue with people who are like heavily opposed.
Right.
Like typically they're sitting in your class.
Mm-hmm. So
like they're interested in the subject.
Yeah. I think that's such an important thing to center, especially like with what's going on in the world right now. There's a lot of people interacting in a very like polarizing type of way. And it's like in the energy, and it's like, it's kind of like we've been like fed this.
Oh, we have been fed
We've
this.
been fed this, like, you have to be in this place where you're constantly on defense, you're constantly on offense, you're constantly trying to explain yourself, you're constantly trying to make somebody see it your way, relevant or not.
Yeah.
And I think I love that there can be those experiences where it's just like we're on the same page, not in an echo chambery type of way, but like we're totally, and not every sentence I say you're going to agree with, but we're on the same page and we're in the same energy stratosphere.
Like we appreciate the same ideas and philosophies.
Yeah.
There is something very nice in that.
And it's so beautiful. And I think it exists so much more than it doesn't.
Probably.
And we're like just addicted to this like fight. Like we have our boxing gloves on.
We kind of do. I don't think that's something we're born with.
No. Well, that goes back to like the palette being something that brings you back.
What if we could go back to who we were in other ways also?
Yeah. That'd be so nice. Well, based on your experience in witnessing people coming back home through their color palette, do you feel like you have any insight to putting down our machetes and guns and boxing gloves and engaging in a safe way?
What's interesting about this is that in the aftermath of having this session, I'm talking about the complete session where it's not just color, because by the way, I do them separately. Like I do colors on their own, and I do the style for people who already have colors and want more, but it's really not style. I've actually renamed that session. It used to be like the style session. I've renamed it to aesthetic alignment. I was so thrilled when I came up with that. I was
That's
like,
incredible.
Like I found it. Like I found the thing that describes exactly what it is that I'm doing, because that's what it is. It's not the entire personal alignment, because it's not about your life collectively, but it's the aesthetic side. Mm-hmm. So like visually you're aligned, and it's like it's not just like style, like it's much deeper, because we're also digging deeper into you, especially with the archetypes. We're like learning about you and then learning how to express that visually. But the interesting thing about the work that I do is that I don't interact that much with people like further down the line. Like the part of your journey that I am there for is the beginning of it. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't always get the follow-up. Like not everyone is always coming back to me months later to like update me. But here's what I do know to be true. And this is something that I write this in the welcome letter to clients. With every person who becomes more aligned with themselves and attuned to the things that are important to them, attuned to themselves, we build a world that collectively becomes more aligned and attuned. And that's the other thing about this. To me, it's not even just about the aesthetic. To me, this is self-development. This is self-development. I also am of the opinion that it's like a personal responsibility thing. I personally am very into like most of my books fall in that category. And I do view it as a personal responsibility because the collective is made up of individuals. Yeah. Right? So with every individual who improves on their own individually, that means that the group is one step closer. I also say this a lot in the context of like family dynamics. When one family member heals, everyone else is able to heal a little bit more. Yeah. So the way I see it in working on yourself and developing yourself, in getting to know yourself and recognizing the beautiful things that you bring to this world. And becoming more attuned and attentive, we benefit everyone as a whole, one at a time.
Wow. That really resonates. Yeah, I feel like it's like a personal responsibility to show up in this way. Show up.
That is precisely. This actually, first, a second ago, I remembered what I was going to say, and this actually ties into that.
Beautiful.
What I was going to say is that I've noticed a lot for many, many people, and obviously this is not across the board, but I have noticed this pattern where people who are coming and getting their colors done very often, not always, but very often, I think specifically for the like stronger types, I think very often for the people with ruler energy, actually, they come and they're wearing these colors that are way too soft for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you actually need to be wearing these much stronger colors because you're very strong. My sister,
I had that. I don't know if I'm a ruler energy, but I definitely had that experience when I got my palette done.
It's like, oh, like it's supposed to be much stronger. I have one of my winter family members. We're mostly winter. My winter sister, I remember in high school, she was wearing these like she had this like one dusty purple t-shirt, like summer purple, like muted, like purple mixed with gray. And like she had a few other clothes that were just like incredibly faded. And of course it really didn't work for her. And it's also like when someone is wearing colors that are too muted for them, it's because they're not stepping into the totality of who they are. They're not showing up. And you have to. Sometimes these people feel like, oh no, like I'm being too much. Let me tone myself down. This actually ties into a longer conversation that I was having with a different sister. Very often we're under the impression that we're being too much, but most of the time we're not being enough.
Yeah. Mic drop. I brought you on for that sentence. Literally. Wow. It's hard for doing it.
It is hard. But that's the work.
Yeah. I mean, it's breathtakingly beautiful. And like, if that's the hard work, then like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like a joyous, like exciting path.
I think so.
Yeah.
Very pretty one.
Beautiful. Like beautiful.
Because we're all about the aesthetics.
Exactly. Wow, I love that. Do you have either a closing thought or like, and that can be like insider tips and tricks, something like that, but something that our listeners can go away with?
Okay, so
to embody what you just shared.
To bring it all home.
Yes.
So first, I have so much more to say.
Oh, I know.
Like we could sit here for another 4 hours.
Part
like,
2 is coming.
No joke. So much more to say. So kind of 2 parts. The first is that it is really difficult for me to give collective advice because this is so individual.
I love that.
Like, I can't, like, what am I going to tell you? Like, wear this, wear, like, I'm going to tell, like, the audience, like, everyone, you should be wearing more of this or that. Like, I can't do that because some people need to be wearing one thing and other people need to be wearing another thing. Like, I cannot give style advice that applies to everyone. But what I can say is that whether or not you've gotten your palette done, we can move through our lives with more intention. Where when you're getting dressed in the morning, and you can do this without having gotten your palette done. You could also, in that newsletter that I wrote, I included a bunch of journal prompts to like guide people back to.
Love
Should
that.
I pull them up?
No,
Do you want to read them?
I feel like we need to like send them to the people. I want them.
Are you subscribed to my newsletter?
I'm not.
So subscribe because that's where all the goodness is. But
Called
no,
out.
the purpose, what?
Called out.
The purpose of, there was just like very targeted questions. There was actually something very interesting in there. One of the questions was, what are the negative qualities that people attributed to you growing up? What are some of the positive qualities? What are the negative qualities? And the reason for that is that I'm going to pull it up.
Please.
Because I already wrote it.
Yeah.
And I think I wrote it fairly well. So here we go. How do the people around you describe you, both the positive and the negative? Very often, the negative descriptions people use for us are simply the shadow side of our positive traits. The leader is described as bossy. The aesthete is described as shallow. That one is about me specifically. The creative is described as scattered. So it's very interesting to go back when you were a child. What were the criticisms that people had of you? This actually got a bunch of responses, and someone wrote to me like, this is actually the thing that I've been grappling with, seeing myself as scattered, and then to recognize that like, oh, this is because I'm actually really creative. But you know what? I could continue saying what I was saying, but also here's a takeaway. Take a minute, sit down, and reflect. Think about what were the negative attributes that people kind of labeled you with, because there's insight in that.
I find a lot of that to be like the exact opposite. Sometimes there's like certain things that people said about me when I was young, which is like completely the exact opposite of who I am.
Give me an example.
Let me get a little vulnerable here.
Well, we might as well. I like to dive in though. Like, we're going to talk about it. Like, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
What was one thing? I'm telling you, like, I'm like reacting, and I'm like, I just don't remember a single thing.
That's fine.
I feel like I should, like, this is.
So you can journal about that.
I can journal about that.
I love journaling. I write a lot.
It's very interesting because the one thing that you shared about stepping into your palette and how sometimes you're not too much, you're not enough. And that was the most shocking thing for me when I got my palette. I had so many like very vivid colors, and I was just like, it took a while for me to even like. Certain colors I got into right away, but there was a certain element of the power that I did not have access to at all. And I can definitely relate it to certain like beliefs that I was given about myself, for sure.
That's very often how it happens.
Yeah. I'm like trying to think of an example. No, I'm scattered.
That's fine. It's totally
it's great.
Fine.
It's all part of the process.
Absolutely. The thing that I was really going to say in terms of a takeaway for people is, even without having gotten your palette, and you could still take an extra second to evaluate, you're holding up whatever it is, does this feel good for me?
Yeah.
Do I like how I feel in it? Is it something that enhances my experience of the world? Is it something that I feel is expressive of me and where I'm at?
How does it make me move?
Yeah. How does it help me show up? Does it make me stronger? Does it make me less strong?
Does it make me insecure? Does it make me question myself? Does it make me feel pretty? That's like a basic question.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all really good questions. And I think the bravery to really step into who you are, the bravery to also know when to push and know when to be gentle and just like be a little behind the scenes or be a little less intense. Or
this takes practice.
Of course it takes practice.
So much practice.
So much, 100%. And self-trust is a huge piece of it. I think self-trust is all of it.
Stolen from you, it takes time to build back up.
No, it takes years. I mean, for me, it's taken years, and yeah, and I hope that we can support each other and make ourselves and each other feel more safe to be able to be who we were truly meant to be.
Amen.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thank you for having me.
This
was great. This was beautiful.
It was so beautiful.
Enjoyable. I'm like, we could literally keep going for hours.
Oh, we will. No. Leave while you're still having fun. And I'm saying you'll come back. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, I'm down.
You're like, I
have stuff to say. Remember, it was like, oh, like, what are we going to talk about? Like, oh, don't worry, we'll find stuff.
Oh, there was no question. It was just like, we have to pick something to start. I think we did okay.
We picked like one thing. We just need the first like thought, the inciting incident.
We actually, I think this is the first time in my life doing an interview where we checked all the boxes on our like list, our to-do list.
Good.
So good. Congrats.
Yes, I love it. We did it.
We did it. Thank you so much to our listeners. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Stay fabulous.
Do I plug?
Oh my God. Yes, please. I'm like, wait, what did I forget? Plug, please.
My Instagram handle is Ruth. I was actually going to say this when you said Procaccia earlier. Lately, I've been just saying it as Procaccia. It's an Italian name. Did you know that? It's Italian, like focaccia, but with a PR. But my Instagram handle is now Ruth Procaccia also. A tiny little side note. I actually go by Ruthy. But I made the conscious decision to make the handle Ruth, not Ruthy. It felt more like that sort of like short, crisp winter sort of energy.
I was going to ask you before how you want me to introduce you, and then I didn't.
So no, I was like, at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to make this switch to Ruth. But every time people call me Ruth, I still haven't gotten used to it.
Interesting.
And in my head, I'm like, why are you calling me Ruth? And like it says everywhere Ruth. So like clients come in and they refer to me as Ruth. And in my brain, I'm like, why are you calling me that? But yeah, the handle is Ruth Procaccia. Once you start typing RUTHPRO, it'll come up.
We'll also link it below in the show notes.
Link it below. I'm still working on my website stuff, but don't worry, I'll post that on my Instagram.
Yeah.
So if you're following me there, you'll get the update.
Exactly.
But yeah, I do color, and then I also do the aesthetic alignment. So
are you still doing illustrations, or
I am. I don't really talk about it that much, but I am doing that if you're interested in art for me. Oh, I didn't mention I also I've used the illustration to convey the themes of a palette stuff.
Gosh.
So I have a series that is like I have a fashion illustration for each of the 4 seasons. I've also done a men's version, which is really cute. So like you can buy and I'm working on expanding it. So like there's lots of stuff there. I'm actually working on this one series, doors. Those pictures of like French doors. You know what I'm talking about? Or like what is it? Not Mediterranean. What's the like Greek? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I'm working on a series there. So cool. I finished the autumn one. It's really awesome. The summer's it's coming out so good.
And this is all digital.
French. Yeah.
So fun.
So I have those prints. It's actually funny. I didn't think to mention that earlier. The like merging of the two. But yeah. So there's the art. There's the palette.